If you want to build a lean physique that turns heads and makes you feel genuinely proud of yourself, you need to understand how to diet in a way that doesn't feel like dieting. I've spent the past 5 years reverse engineering what traditional healthy diets looked like and applying these principles for me and my clients to make fat loss effortless. And it's allowed me to build more confidence, more energy and more happiness than I could ever imagine at 19. I broke dieting down into 4 stages that don't just get people to commit, but makes them never want to go back to the way they used to eat. Now, most people think the best way to lose fat is to dive straight into tracking calories, but that approach is the exact reason for why you fall back into pre-eating habits every single time. Now, if you're someone who's tried losing fat in the past with different diets, but you always find yourself back at square one, at some point you will have thought to yourself that you suck at eating healthy because you lack discipline. But it's not your discipline that sucks, it's that you've skipped the essential stages of an effective diet transition that actually makes eating healthy stick. Off the bat, I need you to understand that most people, and probably yourself, are looking at fat loss and dieting the complete and utter wrong way. Nutrition is portrayed as the hardest part of fat loss, but for me, I don't even have to think about it. Nutrition has become second nature to me. For reference, I am 19 and I haven't had cravings in over half a decade. I started this shit when I was 14. Now if you think about it, at 14 I was perhaps the most susceptible to cravings. All my friends around me were having it, my family were having treats pretty often, but not only did I stop eating the way everyone else around me was, I stopped craving those foods entirely. Now at 14, that's not luck. There's no magic stroke of discipline that I've been gifted with. It's a system. But this system I made at 14 came from an entirely new perspective on what fat loss should look like. Now right off the bat, I understand you're probably thinking, oh, this guy's doing too much. That's way too much restriction. Way too much discipline. You gotta enjoy yourself a bit, man. That's where your perspective on dieting is wrong. Let's play a game. If I say the word diet, what words come to mind? Maybe eating less, tracking calories, eating healthier, having some boring meals, under-eating, restricting yourself, force-feeding yourself foods you don't want. In general, most people view dieting as an overall negative experience. Now, I actually completely agree with you. I hate dieting. It sucks. When I first started, I force-fed myself chicken, broccoli and rice every single day, and I hated it. I hated it so much. I actually got to the point where I developed a bit of an eating disorder for about 2 or 3 weeks. I would have chicken, broccoli and rice, and when it came to the broccoli, I could not physically swallow it. I would be chewing the broccoli for about 10 minutes in my mouth trying to gulp, and I just couldn't do that shit. And it was ultimately because I was force feeding myself meals that I absolutely hated. And that's why I came up with these stages to prevent stuff like that from happening. I believe nutrition should be the most enjoyable part of fat loss. Without further ado, let's get back into the slides. Like I said earlier, a good diet transition isn't measured by how fast you start, it's measured by how sustainable it becomes. In essence, if you don't love what you're doing, you're never going to stick to it. But let's reverse engineer what actually gets you there. Here's the framework I use for my diet transition that's allowed me to live craving free for over half a decade. Now for reference, this is what I used to look like. On the left picture you see that I have a bit of fat on me, not much muscle, in general, what people call a skinny fat build. But now, as you see in the picture on the right, I've got way more detail on my stomach, my obliques, the biceps popping a little bit, a tiny little lat vein. In general, it's a lot better. It's a lot better than what I used to look like. Now let's get into the framework. It is 4 stages and they happen in this exact order: enjoyment, structure, observation, then tracking. But here's the part most people get wrong. They skip straight to tracking. They focus on eating less, increasing activity, and eating healthily all at once. And it falls flat every single time because they're trying to change everything in one go. If you actually think about it, most people who are trying to begin eating healthy won't have been eating healthy for most of their lives. So let's say maybe 10 years of unhealthy eating, maybe even 20. That is years, even decades worth of developing unhealthy eating habits. And if you try and change that in one shift, it's never gonna work. Because you're literally having to rewire the habits that you've been doing your entire life. That just cannot be done in one go. I'll ask you this, when was the last time you learned something new and got it perfect on the first try? You didn't. Nobody does. Skill is built in sequence and you cannot skip steps. Now stage 1 is the enjoyment stage, the most important part of all of this. The people who stay lean long term don't hate their meals because they look forward to every single one of them. Before even attempting a diet, you have to learn how to enjoy eating healthy food first. Now there are only 2 reasons for why people quit diets. They either don't eat enough or they don't enjoy what they're eating. Every diet failure comes back to one of these two things, and this whole system is built to make sure neither of those two things happen to you. So what should your meals actually be built around? Think of it less like a list of foods and more like a priority order. Protein sits at the top of the list because it's the main thing that's going to fill you up and actually help you build muscle. You've got your foods like beef, fish, eggs, chicken, any other types of meats. That is what you build your meals around. Then after meat, dairy comes next. Foods like full fat yogurt, cheese or milk. Dairy is so underrated because when you eat foods higher in fat, that gives you a way longer, more sustainable energy source throughout the day because fat is slow releasing. So essentially you eat the fat and your energy goes like this. It's very steady and it's going to help you get over your cravings because you will be feeling fuller for longer throughout the day. Then next is complex carbs. Foods like sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, rice, quinoa. These complex carbs will enhance your performance in the gym. Now next is vegetables, and no, you do not have to have vegetables. Vegetables are a preference. Way too many people like to put vegetables on a pedestal as this incredibly nutrient potent food. But vegetables actually carry a lot less nutrients than what people think. Your meats and dairy have so many more bioavailable nutrients than vegetables do. And if I'm being honest with you, I've never liked vegetables. Ever since I've grown up, ever since I tried dieting, even now, I don't like vegetables. Now if you enjoy vegetables, that's not to say you can't have them because they will help you keep full throughout the day. But if you don't enjoy them, don't feel the need to force yourself to have them. That's a mistake I made and that resulted in a weird eating disorder for a couple of weeks. And it wasn't a nice experience to have. So if you like vegetables, chuck them in there as a little side. But if you don't like them, there's no need to have them in there. Then the last food is fruit. Fruit is freaking amazing, especially for when you have those late night cravings and you need something to eat. That is when you have fruit. Fruit is incredibly beneficial for being used before your workouts or when you want to snack. But your meals should never be fully based around fruit as they're not that filling. But it can definitely help in those situations where we are feeling hungry. Now every single meal should fill you up so much that you forget snacks exist. We really want these meals to make you feel full because if you're feeling hungry, fat loss is going to become so much harder. You need to find 5 healthy meals that you actually look forward to eating. Not 5 meals you can tolerate, but 5 meals you're always excited for. Again, this is the enjoyment stage and the whole purpose of this phase is to learn how to enjoy eating healthy. Now these recipes should be based on meals that you naturally like. Everything that you currently have to some degree was derived from a natural product. Now for me, I used to really like chicken nuggets and chips, I loved fish fingers, I loved burgers, but I wasn't always having the healthiest version of that. So what I did is I took those meals that I really enjoyed and I learned how to make them healthy. I went on YouTube, tried a couple different recipes, and then when I found the recipe that tasted the best, I dialed that in and added it to my meal cycle. This phase is really about exploring what you like. So take 2 to 3 weeks and learn as many healthy recipes as you want until you get to the point where you have 5 meals that you really look forward to having. Now once you've actually got those 5 meals you enjoy, you've essentially solved half the problem. The other half is making sure you reach for them at the moment you're most tempted not to. That's stage 2. Stage 2 is structure. If you don't have structure on some level, you're always going to relapse no matter how healthy you're eating. And structure doesn't mean obsessing over meal times, but it actually means that there's never a point in your day where you don't know what you're eating next. If there's a point throughout the day where you don't know what you're having, that is when temptation is going to come out the most. I'm going to get you to ask yourself these questions. What made you give in to your last craving? Not the craving itself, but the moment right before it. How did you feel 30 minutes later? Did it actually fix anything? Whatever that answer is, that's what needs to be protected inside your meal structure. Here's the actual shape of the day. Wake up, then do a 20 to 30 minute walk before you eat anything. This helps with hunger, your circadian rhythm, and it clears your head. Then have breakfast, have lunch, have dinner, without there being a default snack slot yet. Now if you've built 5 meals that you genuinely enjoy in stage 1, you should not need snacks. But again, this is personal. If you know you crave at a specific time, Plan a meal from the pyramid around that moment. This is essentially going to help you kill the temptation or the craving before it even begins. Now if you actually run stages 1 and 2 for a few weeks, something really interesting starts to happen. You start noticing a few things about your body and about your patterns that nobody else could tell you. That's stage 3, the observation stage. Now for some reason, literally nobody in the industry is talking about this. Most fat loss advice assumes one diet works for everyone, but it doesn't. Fat loss is personal and it depends on your body, your schedule, and more importantly, your life. And that's why this stage exists, because it's to find out what actually works for you before you start measuring anything. But what should you actually be observing? Ask yourself these questions. Are you enjoying your meals? Is it giving you more energy? Are you starting to look better? And the really big question, is there zero friction between you and food? Are there no internal battles at mealtimes? Are you no longer forcing yourself to eat healthy? If the answer is yes, that signals that you're in the right place. But in this phase, you might find that it's not actually perfect. You might notice that something isn't quite working. And that's not a setback, that's the system doing its job. If a meal stopped being enjoyable, swap it. If you're not seeing progress, lower your portion slightly. Really just trust that feeling, that natural instinct. If you ignore that feeling when it shows up, that just makes the friction way harder to undo later down the line. Now I physically cannot stress this enough. If you actually want to make fat loss work this time, you have to enjoy what you're doing. Nutrition should always come from a place of love, from enjoyment, from excitement, instead of a place that comes from discipline and misery and pain. Because when you genuinely enjoy what you're eating, how you're feeling and the results you're actually seeing, that's when eating healthy stops feeling like dieting and it just becomes the way you live. Now by this point, you will already have built the habits required to have a good physique. Eating healthy will have now become normal for you. So moving on to stage 4 isn't where the results start, but it's where we sharpen what's actually working. Stage 4 is tracking. Now this is where most people start, but it's actually where you should finish. Tracking from day 1 always fails because it feels like an endless chore. You're measuring food that you don't even like yet. But when you're tracking after stage 3, that feels completely different because the habits are built in and now you're simply fine-tuning what's already working. For tracking, you should use everything you observed in stage 3 as your baseline. Weigh your food, log it into MyFitnessPal. Essentially what you're doing is you're tracking what's getting you progress, what's getting you results, so that those habits become incredibly consistent day after day. Now for optimizing fat loss, I'm going to go into a concept that you probably haven't heard before, but it's incredibly important for continuing to lose fat, and it's incredibly important to make sure you're getting stronger and building muscle in the gym. Now what is carb cycling? Carb cycling is where you consume more carbs on days you're working out and higher protein and fat on the days you're resting. Now why are we doing this? Like I touched on earlier, carbs are your preferred energy source for intense effort. But on a day that you're not training that hard, those carbs don't really get used. They essentially just sit in your bloodstream until your body stores them as fat. So the fix is simple. You eat more carbs on the days you train and less on the days you don't. Now on rest days, there's no intense demand for that sort of fuel. That is where fat is the better source here. Fat is slow and steady energy that's suited to low output days. Now think of consuming high carbs every day like never turning down the volume on a speaker. If you leave the volume cranked high all the time, it eventually stops feeling loud. Carbs work the same way with your insulin response. If you eat them every single day and your body gets used to them, your insulin sensitivity drops. So essentially you need more carbs to get the same effect. So that's why we pull back on rest days. Because your body resets, by the time you train again, your muscles are primed to use those carbs faster and more efficiently than before. Now the thing is, you don't even have to go through stage 4, the tracking aspect specifically. If you literally just want a lean body that you're proud of, you just want to see your abs that you've never had before, you want to see some veins, you want to see your muscles pop in places you never even knew you had, then stages 1 to 3 already gets you there. The whole idea of stage 4 is to fine tune what's already working. It's essentially the extra 10%, but you really don't need it. Yes, you will probably see a little bit better results from stage 4, but again, if you're busy, this is more that you have to do onto your busy life that you don't really need to be doing, right? Like I said, if you just want a lean body, stages 1 to 3 already get you there. Now before you undergo this diet transition, you need to understand this. You should never tell people that you're going on a diet, because a diet is just a phase. But the way you're about to eat can last a lifetime. Now here's how to know that you've actually mastered every single checkpoint. Stage 1, if you're looking forward to every single meal you're having, you've completed it. Stage 2, if you've never hit a point of uncontrollable hunger, you're done. Stage 3, if you look better, feel better, and still love what you're eating, you're done. And stage 4, if tracking calories and what you're doing feels effortless and not stressful, then you're done. Now, do not move on to the next stage, no matter how eager you are to do so, until the current stage feels like what I've just described. Now, I am a big believer in visualizing what you get on the other side of all this hard work. Picture the version of you on the other side of this. What do you look like now? How do you feel? What's your energy like? What do people around you notice? Visualize all of these things, and it's going to help reinforce why you're doing this. Upon embarking on this whole process, you will realize that fat loss should never have felt as difficult as it was when you previously tried it. Most people, perhaps yourself, dive straight into calorie tracking, eating less, and forcing meals upon yourself that you don't enjoy. And remember, if you go about fat loss this way, you will fail, because that fast way of fat loss is totally reliant on your discipline and willpower. It is never a sustainable system. People don't fail at dieting or eating healthy because they suck at it. They fail because they're going through the stages in the wrong order. Remember, these are years, perhaps decades worth of eating habits that you have to change. It is a process. You have to gradually do it. That's why these stages exist. This whole process is not some short-term hack. This journey will result in you changing how you naturally want to eat for the rest of your life. Now, if this video gave you clarity on your next actionable steps on what to do, but you want guidance to make sure that you're actually doing it right, DM me the word diet on Instagram, @LucaMarge, same as my YouTube, or book in a call in the link below.